Her daughter, my patient, internalizes this as her responsibility. She feels as though she caused her mother's emotional state, and this guilt begins to eclipse her own needs. She even starts to contemplate abandoning her graduate program in order to protect her mother from what? From having to experience any painful feelings. Why does the request to just share my feelings from her mother carry such weight? I hope I'm beginning to make clear that unconsciously it threatens the child's deepest fear, that her independence, that's going off to school in this example, might shatter the bond and leave her mother feeling hurt and overwhelmed. We slowly come to discover that inner, again, not yet conscious feelings, as the child of a covert narcissistic parent include, but are not limited to, 1. She steps into the role of an emotional caregiver for her mother, a role familiar to her from earlier in life when her parents divorced and her mother turned to her, and I'm quoting this, like a best friend. This is an example of what we would call a role reversal. Some people call it parentification. 2. She feels a strong pull to merge her separate wishes into her mother's wishes so that the bond, and I quote, the bond feels intact. This reflects a merger fantasy, something I've discussed in far more detail in prior episodes, something that's really common among people who have these narcissistic traits, where individuation is experienced as abandonment and therefore must be avoided at all cost. And finally, the mother's distress endangers her own attachment security. The unconscious conflict becomes, if she pursues, that's the daughter, if she pursues her own desires and autonomy, she risks both hurting her mother and losing her mother's love. And that's breaking the bond, which she too depends on, by the way. You can imagine how trapped a child might feel in that moment, torn between her own growth and her mother's emotional collapse.